Hello, my name is Courtney Shanti, and during this discussion, we will be analyzing an ethical dilemma within an organization. This organization was provided a major grant um, within their agency by a higher provider, but the qualifications required one to be not only employed, but also have a child. Depending on the clients that the agency service, which most people are older than children age because that would have been specified, this stipulation or these requirements could be a major downfall for this agency because of the employment requirement and or also having to have a child. The population that will be impacted throughout these requirements while trying to provide this resource of housing to individuals to be that are, employed and have a child under the age of 18. The people that will be impacted not only will be the elderly, disabled, and ultimately all individuals who were not, in fact, employed or having a child, as already stated, under the age of 18. Unfortunately, people cannot help when they are sick or illnesses come about and they are no longer able to get a job or they are going back and forth to doctor's appointments and things that require time or health of a certain status to be able to travel going back and forth, to be able to actually work and make enough money to pay bills of substance. Um, it is important to also know that not all people are able to have children. So making that a requirement can be a arguing point, I would say, because all people are not able by God to produce children. That's just not something that their body allows them to do health wise or just inheritance, so on and so forth. So making you having to have a child for a housing requirement could be an arguing point for not only the advocating social worker, but for that agency to get leniency from that major grant provider. Um, as a social worker, relevant ethical values that can be acknowledged would be service, competent, and important of human relationships. Service is a primary goal of not only the social worker, but also the agency and the community that they service to help the people in need and make those connections personally, community, and organizationally. Competence is one thing that can be tricky if boundaries are not communicated um, early on because you may want to waver from certain rules or qualifications that may have been put in place depending on the client and the relationship, but it is important to always reiterate those boundaries and also have integrity within that position as a social worker within that organization to make those right decisions, not only for your client, but for yourself to maintain that integrity with your agency, your clients, and with those providers of different grants and things of that nature. One ethical decision making model that I would apply to this would be while advocating for open qualifications would be Lowenberg and Dogoff. A decision making model of the 7 principles will be applied by focusing in on the equality of all of this, as well as the moral sensitivity, moral judgment, moral motivation, and moral character. Moral sensitivity would be some more so recognizing how this decision affects my client, myself, my organization, and acknowledging their feelings as well as how they are affected. After recognizing the dilemma and the components involved, it will be applying moral reasoning and principles to decide what is right. That will be me as a social worker, letting them know that unfortunately, if they don't qualify, that this is not something that they could have, but because I am a social worker and I'm building those relationships within the community, that this is not a stopping point, just a stepping stone, because by connecting with churches and other things that and shelters as well, that they would not be out on the street, that they would have housing. It may not be permanent, however, they would not be sleeping on the street. The role of the social worker is simply to advocate for that client. Let the agency know how your clients feel. Allow an open door policy where clients are able to come in and talk about how they feel about this new resource that is being distributed, but they don't qualify. Um, my ethical responsibility would be to always let my clients know what's available to them, how they can qualify, how they can apply, and helping them following through on that process. However, if they don't qualify, only thing that I can do is reach out in different ways to help them meet the needs that they have and help them meet their goals, and ensuring them that my focus is always them and their needs, but it is always important to be honest so that boundaries in the relationship is not at risk of being ruined because of dishonesty or loss of integrity. My plan of action moving forward would just be to continue being honest with my client, allowing them the floor to speak, and listening, taking notes, collecting valuable data so that I can, when the opportunity presents itself, provide honest feedback to my agency, and that adjustments and changes could possibly be made moving forward. I know as a social worker that this could possibly cause harm to not only my client mentally, with them declining or feeling as if they were left out, but just with that constant communication and reassurance, I feel that they would be reassured that hopefully things change or if resources open up elsewhere, that I always had their best interest at heart, and I would, further communicate those details when I was given that information. The long-term outcome of this would just be to keep in that communication. It is important as a social worker to build those relationships and communicate with your clients so that they know that not only you care, but their best interest is in your heart. And though monetary or resource wise, you may not always be able to provide immediately, but just knowing that they always have a shoulder to lean on and a listening ear is always better than nothing. Just having nothing or nobody at all. Sometimes people don't have anything. And knowing that they have somebody that they can confide in and they can believe in, and whether if it's just a little lunch or a simple meal or something to help them get by, they know that they can confide and they can count on, that person. So as a social worker, my number one goal within any ethical dilemma, I'm sorry, it will always just be to keep open, honest communication and to always let my clients know up front once I'm given information so that me and my client can ultimately come up with a plan together.